This week, there were pastors all over the world who were struggling with putting together their first online Palm Sunday service. And I was one of them. Even more than that is the question of what to say. What to say in a time like this, a time that's never happened like this before in our histories, anyone on earth or any time in history. There is no roadmap for this. We can't Google it or MapQuest our path. And so with that, there's something that a desire to say something profound, to say just the right thing, that's just right. And maybe it's an unconscious belief or desire that if we can just find the one right thing to say, it'll make everything better. But you and I know that that's not the case. There's no one right thing to say. But there are reflections, observations, thoughts, and insights that we're all making here. And I've been writing them down, sometimes on a small pieces of paper or wherever I am, or on napkins, so I'm always really careful about when I throw my napkins away to see if there's a note there. And one of the things I've noticed is the power of small things. I use the word infinitesimal in my sermon title, which is a fancy word for extremely small. In our culture, it's the big things that get all the press. It's what the Guinness Book of World Records is all about. For example, we marvel at who's had the highest buildings. What country has that? We ooh and ah over the fastest cars, or the sports heroes, or movie stars, celebrities. Even in church, in the church world, there's a fascination with what is bigger. Is bigger really better? Is bigger better in church or in general? The smaller, quieter things in life get sometimes overlooked because they're smaller and quieter. You got to make a point to notice them and listen for them. Within all the noise and the chaos of the world, listen for them. Look for them. But they are there, these small things of the world, patient and waiting to be discovered. And they're not always pleasant, as we've recently learned. For example, the COVID-19 virus that is wreaking havoc around the globe. Small. How small, you might ask? You might be asking yourself, well, let's ask leading virologist Peter Piot. He answers the question exactly how small is a virus? Tiny. Teeny tiny. Even with a regular microscope, you can't see a virus. 100 million viral particles of the novel coronavirus can fit on a pinhead. Now I didn't have a pinhead. I have a safety pin. But that's small. It's a little tiny pinhead. 100 million viral particles can fit on there. Coronavirus is what got me thinking about the power of small things. Now, Jesus knew well the power of the small, the infinitesimal, that's a tongue twister. In describing the kingdom of heaven and what it's like in Matthew 13, Jesus said, "The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed that someone took and sowed in his field. It is the smallest of all seeds, but when it has grown, is the greatest of shrubs. It becomes a tree, so the birds of the air come and they make nests in its branches." Such power and glory contained in a tiny seed. Just think of what is contained in a small acorn and how that grows into a mighty oak. And how about you and I? All of us here on earth, we all began the size of about a grain of rice. And our small country church is mighty. We have said that many times. If you look at the picture I showed at the beginning of the service of our sanctuary, it's very beautiful. And I noticed something, though, when I looked at that picture, that it's also not very large. and it's simple in its beauty. This Sunday, we were shown with pictures and videos that our church is not empty. It never really was, because God is there, because God is everywhere, and because our hearts are there too. This small and simple room has been transformed into God's house, into a sanctuary. Just think about all the prayers and the love and laughter, how much struggle and pain and grief and joy and friendship and more is contained within those walls. The prayers that come from this place, from our small country church, from the place and the people, they changed the world. That church in Garden Prairie has changed the world. The prayers spoken by you and by all people who've ever been there over the decades changed the world. Whether they come from the sanctuary or from our homes. We're learning how important the little things are in what we now understand is flattening the curve, what we're giving up, things we like to do, people we like to see, simple, everyday, small things. Things often that I think we took for granted, a lot of them. But these small things that together will make a big difference. They'll make things better. They're a way of showing love. Small things make a difference. And how do these reflections speak to our Palm Sunday story? Such just think about what happened in the world. World was transforming at that first Palm Sunday. But it all started so small, so tiny, from Jesus as a tiny little newborn baby. Jesus was from a small town like not unlike Garden Prairie. Jesus, he started with 12 people, 12 disciples in a local area. And from that small beginning, that grew to 2.8 billion Christians around the world today. 2.8 billion Christians around the world, all over the globe. God seems to like small things. God uses small things to make big changes. And the events of Palm Sunday with the crowds and the followers and the small details are part of the greatest story ever told. That is the story of the great transformation. The greatest transformation the world has ever seen is the very story of God's kingdom coming here on earth. God's kingdom is here. Small things are powerful. Remember that as you go through your lives, especially during this time. Know what you do makes a difference. Don't do something because you think it's too small. Remember that your smile could make someone's day. Even if right now that smile might be through a window. The card you send might light up someone's world. That card or the note may just make their day, light up their world. The small things we do were never small at all. The German mystic Meister Eckhart once said, "If the only prayer you ever say in your entire life is thank you, it will be enough." Short and simple prayers are enough, and you are enough. So I end this talk this morning with a small but powerful prayer of thank you. Amen.